From the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
And welcome to today's program. I'm Roby Brock. Thank you for joining us. It was a big week at the Arkansas Legislature, although next week may be bigger for news. Governor Sarah Sanders unveiling more details of her Learns education plan. The big takeaways of what she's proposing: a minimum starting teacher salary of $50,000. That will take Arkansas from the bottom 10 to the top 5 in the country. Pay raises to $50,000 for those teachers making less than that amount. The potential for $10,000 bonuses for teachers who excel. Forgiveness for student loan debt for teachers who locate in high-need areas of Arkansas. A repeal of the Teacher Fair Dismissal Act. 120 literacy coaches who would be deployed across Arkansas to help kids improve their reading success. K through 3 students struggling with reading would also be afforded $500 per year for supplemental education services. She also revealed that her voucher system for allowing public school funds to follow students to other choices would be called Education Freedom Accounts. The school choice plan will be phased in over 3 years, starting with at-risk families first, and would eventually be universal to all students in Arkansas. No bill filed yet, but an expectation that it may become public next week. Until then, we will ask our many questions of Arkansas Secretary of Education Jacob Oliva, who now joins us. Thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank
Was
you
I
for having me.
fairly accurate with a lot of that? I mean, correct me if there was an error in there.
I think you did a great job outlining some of the highlights. Governor Sanders has been very clear that improving education in the state of Arkansas is going to be her priority, and this vision is going to help us move that needle.
All right, let's talk about education freedom accounts first, because I think that's going to be a new concept to a lot of Arkansans out there. Kind of what will they allow, who's going to qualify, and how do they work, I think would be just a general question.
So I think it's important to note that this entire comprehensive package is really about improving learning and access for learning for all students. And I'm a product of public schools. I worked in public schools. I believe public schools should be the first and best choice for families and students. But the reality is a one-size-fits-all approach to public education may not meet the needs of all students and families. So what this program does is it creates opportunities for families and students to find alternative methods to the traditional public school. Some families may choose virtual schools, some families may choose homeschool, some families may do dual enrollment or choice opportunities within the school district. But this Freedom Fund is about providing dollars to families and resources to families if they want to choose primarily private education. That concept's not new to Arkansas. There's a small program right now called the Succeeds program. This is really going to expand on those opportunities for families. The
Succeed program, I think, is a tax credit. Is this going to be a tax credit? Is it going to be money up front? I know some states have like a card that allow you to, charge expenses on it. How will the freedom accounts work?
So part of those details, I think, are still being ironed out as we work with the legislature. But kind of the overall concept is that students would be able to enroll in a private school that participates in this program. It's important to note that this isn't being forced on families. This isn't being forced on private schools. There's going to be conditions that have to be met and criteria to make sure that if parents are choosing this opportunity, that their children are going to be educated appropriately. But the spirit of this would be when a private school signs up to participate in this program and is vetted, that they would receive direct payments from the state for that to happen.
Okay, so and the conditions that you're talking about that they would have to kind of adhere to, those will be developed in rules and regs probably as this law would be implemented.
You're right. As we work out those details, and we'll see what's in the legislative package, and then additionally there'll be state board rules, but we want to make sure that the schools are accredited, that they're assessing their students in an appropriate manner, and that they have the ability to open school.
This is a 3-year phase-in. Tell me why that was decided to do that way. It will eventually be universal, and would the first year be this next school year? Do you think it can get in place that quickly, or do you think it'll be the year after that?
The intent would be for this upcoming school year for 23-24 to get the program up and running, which is why it's phased in. It's going to be scaled in over time because we're building a lot of systems. We're going to develop a lot of rules, but we're going to prioritize our most fragile learners, students that are stuck in a failure factory. If their zip code school is an F and they know that they can thrive in another learning environment, we're going to make sure we prioritize those students, prioritizing students with disabilities, prioritizing students that are learning English as a second language, We have some students that are in the foster or homeless programs. We want to prioritize those students and the students of our military service members as well.
All right, let's move to another portion. I think this is from some of the information that was released on this. One of the things is no school employee or student is required to attend training on prohibited indoctrination or critical race theory. Give me an example of something that might be gray in that area. Let's just say a school has to do racial sensitivity training or something. How do you handle a situation like that that is not going to alarm people that you're trying to control what's going on?
So I think it's important to note that some of this language is preventative in nature. And when you're talking about topics that may be sensitive to some people, whether it's training for adults or coursework for students, we need to make sure that those controversial topics are taught in a fair and unbiased manner where students are able to look at different points of view, that they're able to debate, to be able to critically think. We should be teaching students how to think, not what to think. Mm-hmm. And if an educator is using an opportunity to open the door to indoctrinate students in their personal beliefs and biases, that's not the role of an educator. It's about making sure we have a fair and balanced approach and that we teach historical facts accurate, and that we're developing our students to become critical thinkers.
There will be fear from some people, though, that the limitations on what you're going to put on that type of teaching is indoctrination in and of itself from the state's perspective. How do you combat that argument?
So the state sets standards that are in courses. Those standards in the courses outline what we expect students to know and learn. If a teacher's teaching the standards, which is what they're hired to do, then they don't have anything to worry about.
Another element that I think is part of the plan is eliminating the Teacher Fair Dismissal Act. This basically has been something that's been a protection for teachers for a number of decades. Have you been here long enough to hear that that is problematic, or do you think that the putting this in this legislation is a little bit more philosophical, ideological in terms of conservatives have had issues with teachers' unions for a long time?
So I've been very fortunate in a few short weeks to visit schools all across the state, to meet with superintendents, to meet with principals, to hear from teachers, talk to parents and students, and hear about ways or things that we can improve. The research is very clear. There is no greater impact to student outcome and learning than the teacher standing in front of those students each and every single day. So the more we can invest, the more we can coach, the more we can develop educators is going to continue to be a priority. But if we have a bad actor or a teacher that's not doing their job, they're hurting kids. And this is about protecting the rights that students learn and not about adults' feelings. And we're going to take immediate action and set up schools to be able to do that.
You've been a teacher before, so you would obviously have some sensitivity to what it's like to be, I guess, to have some sort of law or some sort of procedures that are going to govern what you can and can't do. You'll be comfortable with that?
Teaching is a tough job. Teaching is a calling. Teachers consistently go above and beyond to meet their students' needs. But if a teacher is acting in the best interest of a child and they're doing at their heart what they feel is right to improve learning and outcomes for those students, they're teaching courses, grade level expectations and standards, then we're going to support and continue to support those great educators that go above and beyond and that are having an impact on student learning.
I want to switch to reading proficiency. Another huge part of this is trying to find ways to make kids more literate. I know Arkansas is, I think maybe around, it depends on what scores you look at though, 35% can read proficiently by the time they enter the 4th grade. Why do you think, no state does a very good job on reading proficiency if you look at the state rankings. How realistic do you think you can move the needle on that? Do you think you can move Arkansas from 30 or 35 to 40 or 45? Or do you think it can go much higher than that?
I think it can go much higher. I don't think we're going to stop working or acting with urgency till we can get 90 to 100% of our students at or above grade level in 3rd grade. And what I really appreciate about this bold vision and this investment that Governor Sanders has outlined and that we're working with the legislature on is it prioritizes that early learning space, the birth to four space, the voluntary pre-kindergarten space, looking at kindergarten readiness. We know that if we can get students to come to kindergarten ready to learn, that sets them up successful to be able to read and learn by 3rd grade. And it's really going to invest in professional development in a unified, coordinated system to make sure that the process isn't fragmented And if we do have students that are struggling to learn, we're going to give teachers and families and parents the resources to fill in those holes. That metric by third grade and beyond, we talk about the early learning space from birth to third grade as students are learning how to read. That is a big metric because from fourth grade on, students read to learn. So we want to make sure every student is set up for a path for success.
I've got some more questions on that topic, but I'm being told we got to take a quick commercial break, so stay with us. We're with Jacob Oliva. He is the Secretary of Education for the state of Arkansas. We're back right after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to the program. I'm joined by Jacob Oliva. He's Arkansas's Secretary of Education, and we are talking about a lot of things that are in this omnibus education bill. We were talking about reading literacy. One of the things that I think is in the talking points that have been released is that any student who's not proficient by the fourth grade level is going to be held back until I guess that they are. If right now you've got only a third of your kids reading proficiently, is the aim to hold back 2/3 of the kids in public schools that are not reading proficiently?
So I want to clarify, the goal is not to retain everybody in third grade.
Sure.
And there are students that we know need additional layers of support. The goal is to make sure by third grade we've identified what those supports are and the student is able to have access to those supports. So if a child's been retained previously, they're not going to be retained again. If a child has special needs, those are determinations that get made through an individualized education planning process. We know students are going to move to fourth grade with some holes. This ensures when that student's in fourth grade that the teachers and the resources available to the teachers to teach the evidence-based strategies to improve learning and get those students at grade level are there and in place.
Just coming back to a point that I made earlier, though, when I've looked at state rankings and how proficient kids can read by this early level that we're talking about here, it seems to be that no state does a very good job of it. Is that your assessment too?
Well, I wouldn't say that no states do a good job. Every state has their own unique challenges, and this is why this package is so important, because a one-size-fits-all approach for all students doesn't work. And this is the first step in investing in teachers, investing in schools, but creating opportunities and pathways for students and families. The more choice options we have to meet individual students' needs, the more we're going to see improvements in those metrics that we want to see the needle move in.
Obviously, we haven't seen the bill yet because it's still being drafted. There has been no mention so far about a parental bill of rights like there was in Florida that was highly controversial. Is there going to be something like that in this package? Do you think that could come as separate legislation, or it might not even happen at all? Is it part of Governor Sanders' agenda?
Yeah, well, I think overall, when you look at the spirit of this bill, it's about improving education, which is improving parents' rights. Parents should have a right to choose educational options that meet their needs best. Parents should have a right to know what's being taught into the classroom. We're always going to stand behind improving communication and being transparent. As far as some of the details that you may be mentioning other states have done, that's something that the legislatures, I'm sure, are looking at and taking under consideration for themselves.
The governor said that there's probably about a $300 million price tag on this omnibus education package right here. It'll get scored by the Department of Finance and Administration. What if it's $400 million or $500 million? Do you anticipate something could be scaled back, or do you think we'll bite the bullet and we'll make the extra investment?
Well, I think that's why we have great legislators that know the budget and finance process probably a whole lot better than I do. But when we look at making a bold vision come alive, we know it's going to take an investment. In that price tag, that $300 million, a lot of that is going to be able to come from existing dollars that haven't been allocated yet. But we know there's going to be some new dollars, some new requests that we're going to ask the legislature to consider to make this vision come alive. There's nothing more important, in my opinion, that we can't invest in except for improving our school systems here in Arkansas. When we improve learning and we improve the school systems, everybody wins.
You have been here long enough to know the two words Lakeview, that Arkansas's education system has been under the guise of this Lakeview ruling for a couple of, probably 20 years, close to 20 years now. Was any of the construction of this education plan done through the lens of Lakeview, or do you feel like this could be vulnerable to another Lakeview type challenge?
Well, I think anytime you're looking at implementing bold vision, bold policy, you have to know where you've come from as a state. You have to know what are some of those foundational decisions that have been made decades ago, whether they were in the courts, whether they were in just how we were going to design and support an infrastructure. This is about building on those systems and making sure that we keep the high quality programs that we have. There's a lot of good things happening in schools throughout the state. There's a lot of passionate educators. There's a lot of people working really hard. How do we preserve that? How do we protect that? But also then how do we build on that and engage in that cycle of continuous improvement? So I think when you're looking at scaling out bold initiatives like that, you have to look at everything.
So yes or no, Lakeview was considered when you guys put this together?
I think when you're looking at a vision like this, you can't not consider the history of something that historic to this state. But you have to make sure that as you're going forward and looking at new opportunities, those decisions that have been made through court systems in the past have to be a part of that conversation.
All right, he's Jacob Oliva. He's the Secretary of Education for the state of Arkansas. Good to visit with you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for
me.
answering our questions. I'll have more once the bill gets filed. So
sounds great.
We'll come back.
All right.
We're back with more after this.